morning after birthday. This is the morning after birthday on January 26, 2021, 9:22 a.m. This is a conscious lab. This is a show. This is not a production. This is measurements of myself, measurements of my surroundings, measurements of the internet, and security protocols. How to defend yourself from intrusive effects from the internet. So what are some of the internet spectrums? Well, the internet spectrums seem to be open. I mean, what is open? How do you confine open? How do you hold down open? I mean, the internet is a subjective relativity to distribution of wealth. So what is, I mean, when it boils down to internet, it's like your distribution of wealth is like, and in that distribution of wealth, you're either going to give it away for free, you're going to give it away without knowing it, or you're going to give it away with your attributes in place to protect and reform your own data. So the internet is a statistic of wealth. Not just your wealth, but anybody's wealth who describes himself on the internet. This is all your personal outcomes, your personal feeds, your posts, your social distributions, your ordering, your product ordering, your home, all your home surplus goods, your food, everything. Everything you order from the internet, you leave an imprint on, and you leave a tracking ID, and they're just trying to make it so we can monitor the transactions. Like the next investment to the internet is the transaction monetization and threat theory. Like, what do we do to reinforce transactions on the internet, and how do we monitor? And what it boils down to is we got to reinforce the transactions on the internet. So that's what the bit mining comes in place. See, the bit mining is about transaction orientation, like how to reinforce the transaction. And if we put a bunch of money behind the reinforcement of transactions, then the transaction seal will be more relative and more powerful, more statement-oriented, more organic-oriented. But would it be organic-oriented about mining? And I'm sorry about the stream feed. I'm still working on the stream feed. I'm also recording this, so I'll try to post. I think I might have to do this a different way because my stream adjustment is just bullshit, and it's just choppy and shit, and I'm sorry about that. And I just don't know how to get it fixed because I'm on a wireless USB Wi-Fi adapter, and I don't have my circumstances to the internet tuned like I should, and it's very weird. So what is internet data mining? Like data mining, like, is that really the proximity of socialism, or is it the proximity of assets? And how do my assets become your assets? So data mining should have one objective, and that's to remove the individual and create just assets from that are removable, or try to project an asset that defends all of your assets. And one thing I try to show in this show is that try to come up with a way to defend your assets before they're removed. So I'm not subjectively referring to something to do, as in something to protect yourself from. Alright, that's something to protect yourself from. As you put your contrast into the internet, there are all kinds of monitors, AI districts, and financial districts attuning to the protocols of what you are, what you're being, and what you want. And the thing is they haven't done yet is they haven't convinced the protocols to adhere to a shift. So why is the shift happening? Why is the shift of this person being created? And to do that, they'd have to be a little more personal with the relationships. But that's a projection of the future that someone could attune to, is to be relative towards the personal shifts of society, and why society is shifting. And using the internet, you can basically mine this orientation. And what's happening is we have a lot of social engineers that are hackers mining this information, and it's not being recorded, it's not being data authorized, and it's not subjected to construction. It's just being absorbed and sucked up. Like if there was a vacuum sucking up the good data, where's the good data going? Like who's making the good data? What's up? So all this social mining and engineering, social engineering, the data isn't being recorded. Now that's subjective to a breaking point. That's like a built-in breaking point. That's like, why don't we record socialized data? I mean, we just project it in the internet. We don't distribute it as science. And we're subjective to removing ourselves from science when it comes to socialism. And I would say that some prospects of diplomacy find and augment the ability to remove social data. Before the cohesion of the diplomacy, really. So once the cohesion is an asset of diplomacy, then it doesn't tend to suck on the data as much, and they tend to have control over their own data. Where the cohesions before diplomacy and integration seem to be strung out, and not a very fine orientation, but a chaotic orientation due to some occult-like influences. So mining your data versus someone else's data, I mean, it's not relative to you unless you're out there mining it. And I would say, pick a target, check them out, and see if you can't mine some data, just so you know what people are mining about you. No, it'll help you project your posts better in your internet, in your social blogs, in your Twitter, in your Facebook. If you go out there and just pick a target, and you don't have to hurt them. You can do this without hurting them. Just pick a target and see what it is about them that you want. And then learn for yourself if you have those or not. And if you need to, pick a couple other targets that are different and see what they have you want. And you get a feeling for what it's like to be a social engineer. Protect yourself. Take the challenge to get into the internet and see who and what is out there. Don't be afraid to know your surroundings and to know who's around you. Don't be afraid to know who's vulnerable to you. And your vulnerabilities are one of the most precious commodities of a society like ours, because it's an exploit. Your vulnerability is an exploit on our world. And so money is an adhesion to the most extreme vulnerability, and that's malnutrition, the beyond survival, but the next stage of what the system doesn't congruently supply. But it seems that our system is lacking a congruent state of sufficiency, and we're kind of double backed into a double bank of just sum-tardism. And it's not fair. It's not fair for society to place themselves in a sum-tard and define the sum-tard as a proclamation of existence, especially when they're so defining of many sciences that are relative to distribution theories, weight and distribution theories that are around our planet, in our planet, and for our planet. I think qualifying the ability to see what is in our sky as an economic discipline, and not really a chaotic anti-war, anti-human discipline. It's like, who in our sky really wants to go against humans? And I think we would find that it's a very economic standoff in the sky towards aliens and the distribution of human. And I think we would find that some humans are a distribution of slavery when it comes to aliens. And granted, it may be the most quaint, beautiful love system of pets and slaves, but they get whatever they want, but it's still a system of slavery. And how do we really define the persistence of slavery at a consistent galactic standoff where humans seem to possibly be a product themselves? Where we're all being grown here, we're all being grown and endured to be a prominent self. And what if we really escape the system of the womb by dying? I mean, what if instead of trying to get out of the womb while you're alive, you're supposed to stay in it and be drugged? You're supposed to be drugged and stay in the womb. But this is what I'm saying, is that being drugged and staying in the womb is a sufficient empire that galactically other planets would love to stay drugged and stay in the womb. And that socially any planet out there would love to be able to just stay in the womb for her creation of herself. And projectively, we could have a very dominant standoff of product here as a global concept, is the fact that other globes could experience such compression and protection and really admit they've been stuck in a womb, and all their civilians only kill themselves. There's no intergalactic standoff, there's no intergalactic trade war. I mean, everything gets pretty distributed and taken care of without us knowing about it, and we just live here. And the thing is when the space flows through our system, like when the spatial recognitions inhibit society, it's like sometimes some of us have to know there's an economic galaxy, and sometimes some of us don't. And it boils down to an economic standoff. Your actions will create an investment for someone else, and if the galaxy doesn't see your investments as a profit apparently, then you just don't need to know about the galaxy. So what I say is, how do you represent yourself from a creation standpoint where the galaxy would think it would need you? Well, you would have to know what the galaxy distributed. And I mean, I have some finite ideas, but not, I know subcategories or dangerous elements or anything. And I think I've come to a conclusion that one of the greatest conspiracies of the Milky Way is medicine. I think one of the greatest conspiracies and understandings of the Milky Way is a cohesion of people passing over without regulations and without circumstances to choice. It's like, what we need to understand is on the planets, do they establish the boundaries of death the way we do? Our boundaries of death are incohesive, inconsistent, and non-dilative, very elaborate, very large. We don't choose. We're sucked. We pull. We die. We objectify the choice through abuse. Like, I do have a choice to make my own life, and if I abuse this drug, it can terminate my life, or if I jump off this bridge, it can terminate my life. And some planets I hear don't live that way. They live in a way that they subjectively make the choice, and they live for 10,000 years, and they live for 10,000 years, go off into a desert, and they just evaporate, and that's their choice. So there's other forms of death out there. There's other relatives of death, and there's other realities of death, and I think substantially defining life, first of all, isn't a stationary persistence in distance or planetary or ground of gratitude, but is a persistence of defining death itself. It's like, how do you die? So if I was a person, a scientist talking to aliens, I would ask them and try to understand the technical transition in and out of reality. And subjectively, it wouldn't be a stasis of like manipulation or anything, but it would be just a typical theory of, do you choose it? Do you not choose it? Are you stolen? Are you sucked? Are you created? I mean, and really, the first statement of death comes to the satisfactory that the person's experiencing at the moment, not necessarily after the moment in another reality or a heaven somewhere else. But creative to what death is substantial at is redistribution. So the first state of existence is consistency, distribution, and activation. Well, death is a relative to that stasis of consistency, distribution, and activation, as death is now distributed. Probably see a little over first gear, a little under second gear, but not a full gear. It's a layered consistency of just choice that is predominant towards the persistence of objection and distribution, how to dissolve, pile, and retain the distribution. So what we find is that love, death, and time are very similar. We find that the consistencies, anything with a consistency identifies itself as similar. And death is a consistency. The forefront of projection is a consistency. Time is a consistency. And money can become a consistency. Love is a consistency, a non-compressive, non-dilative consistency. So in a statement such as our placement in space, love is a non-dilative, non-compressive consistency that tracks. So where does that bend to? Does that bend anything? In a world like ours, you can remove time. Do you believe you can remove time from your life? And if you believe you can remove time from your life, could you remove death from your life? But if you try to remove love from your life, what would be the consistency there? If you could keep everything and just remove love, you would retain what the universe retains, which is time, destination, expansion. And love itself gives you the ability to experience all that in a dynamic outpour of precision and physics. Because physics and a statement of time, distribution, and expansion, it boils down to the physics. And the thing is love itself can be a coagulation of that statement along with a coagulation of life, death, and forward. So love is a consistency that binds to every mathematic out there. Love is the all-binding fuel. but how do we prove it? And if we prove it, how do we retain it? And if we retain it, then how do we invoke it? How do we create it? How do we give it agility? How do we give it a manifestation? So if I'm sitting here and I've just developed these statements, and they're just statements right now, right? I mean, but I personally spent 20 years in a very unique journey about how to deliver and develop measurements of actuality, how to ingest the actuality of reality and deliver it through my psyche as a component of trust and truth. So love to me gave me the ability to ingest my data and develop my data in a way that it was coagulatory in a base amplitude of just logic. Like, what is not necessarily the lowest logic, but what is the logic of logic? Like, what is the logic of logic that everybody gets? And that is the magic of 42. That's the magic of 42 in the discipline of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. What is the logic of logic? What does logic itself concise to? Is there an objection? Is there a creative? Is logic itself is something that is attribute of imagination, almost. It's like meant to be recoiled into a definition once logic itself is found, once logic itself is developed. And what I find is that consistently the universe has its own type of logic gate. Like, basically, the consistency of everything has been keeping track of itself, and it only has a spectacular logic gate itself in the everything, in the system of the sky, where I particularly have my own logic gate, which is in my head and in my heart, and you have your own logic gate, which is in your head and your heart, and then your reality, your consistent universe can have its logic gate, because subjectively it can be alive or just inert. I mean, I wouldn't say dead, but it's inert. It's either inert or reactive. So if it's inert, it still has a logic gate, but the logic gate's not active. So if it's active, the logic gate's active. So in your universe, you have your consistency, you have your activation behind you, and then you have your inert state or activated state. And if it's activated, your external reality will have a logic parameter, where if it's not active, you won't have a logic parameter. And those are two precisions of human that we can develop in the future. So under the consistencies of teaching people and how to sustain wisdom, how to use wisdom as a resource and not a subjective standoff of confronting people. The wisdoms between the inherent state of growth are logic and non-logic projections, which don't necessarily attribute to an illness or decomposition, but a style of thinking. And I would say that human here does have the ability to develop a non-logical type of thinking, a non-subjective way of thinking. I think some of us have attributes towards that, some of us have attributes towards other things, and I would say some of it is like the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere, but other things I don't feel concerning the logic gate particularly develops the left or right hemisphere or the left. I think it's more of an association of math and how the fundamentals of it really titrate the brain. And I think you can harness and find a way to titrate the brain through logic and correlations like a muscle. I think is logic correlation is like a telepathy, and I think telepathy is an induction of logic, but it's not a construction of logic. And I think telepathy is an induction of misattainment. I think telepathy itself is an attunement to projection of sensitivity over defense, and that you can get into people through sensitivity way more than you can aggressively. And I think the system is a very fluid nature of how sensitive it can be and steal from people is what it is. I think our system together is not developed a race under this amplitude, because subjectively I get trapped in no data. Because subjectively it could be one of the most powerful things out there to really use love this way. And I think maybe our system is supposed to find the ability to use love and not break it. And I think it's been waiting for the right person to find that decent amount of power and not break it. Because basically our system is like a very high-strung, enthusiastic lover, and she wants to be let out. And the system needs a lover that can not break her virginity, almost, where anger and violence will break her virginity. And it's not that you don't ever want to break it. You don't ever want to break the virginity of this lover when she gets let out. You want to emphasize her essence and spike her attunement and get it out. You don't ever want to violate this lover. And unfortunately, I think she found her way out. I think she found her way out in me. And which is strange to say, but I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. So I'm not sure what that entitles me or what it does for me, but subjectively, it's the recourse of my show, what I'm gonna study. It's gonna be the recourse of my attunement and how I find myself. So, we'll see. Just getting a text here. It says she's so cute. She's so spoiled. Extra treats and toys. Alright, so my buddy just Edgar Allan Poe. Give a shout out to Edgar Allan Poe today. Alright, so shout out to Edgar Allan Poe. My buddy passes his house every day. Says Edgar Allan Poe's Baltimore house. He passes. He lives in Baltimore. He's Chesapeake Bay Rabbit. That's what his name is. Chesapeake Bay Rabbit. Give him a shout out. Much love to you. He told me today I was a brother. I was a friend. I was a really good friend. So we've been chatting. We've been trying to make people feel better on Facebook and Twitter. We got some stuff going. For sure. She's so spoiled. Extra treats and toys. Big Pharaoh. Alright, so I'm just reading some things on my Twitter account. So I like to use Twitter to keep up with people. I'm on there. It's 3VERY043. Or that's 043. 0 or 043. I'll give you a little Easter treat. Try to search for Easter eggs. I like to lay Easter eggs. If you can find them, bring them back. You know, don't just pick them up, but bring them back. That's what the Easter Money is about. You gotta bring them back and activate the reward. So, alright, I know that I'm not getting enough data on my Twitter feed, but I'm gonna keep recording because basically, I'm recording. Try to put this in the video. Apparently, my YouTube feed is just tremendously crappy, and I don't get it because I run my broadband test and everything says like 120 megabytes per second, 5 megabytes upload, and it's just shitty pity. I don't even know if other streamers are getting what I'm getting now. Like, it's just, I'm just gonna end the stream and record it